Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate Day 423, Monday, April the 7th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. Wow. Okay, so we got some news today that I think that you're going to enjoy. We're winning, and here's the evidence. Let's take a look at what's going on, particularly in this past week with the Mueller probe. It appears that the wheels are coming off the Mueller probe in a hurry. Judge T.S. Ellis delivered a body blow to the Mueller team and his Hillary donor posse that he may not recover from. And it gets worse from here. Let's have a little review of the fiasco that has been the Mueller probe. First, he gets Papadopoulos to plead guilty to making false statements. Now, we know a couple of those false statements he made was allegedly speaking with the UK ambassador or the Russian ambassador, which he did not. That was a lie. But also lies he told regarding Mr. Milian and Mr. Misfid, both who have come out and stated that the things that have been attributed to them are false. They both say that they are not sources of the dossier, that they said none of the things that they're being credited with. They deny it all. It looks like Papadopoulos was a liar, but more importantly, we still don't know exactly who was behind Papadopoulos, but it was somebody, and my gut tells me it was someone out of the Bush group, the Bush-McCain group. Maybe Mr. Kramer had something to do with Mr. Papadopoulos. We don't know the full story, but how has that worked out since we're looking at the Mueller probe? So he charges Papadopoulos, and where did that end up? Well, it ended up with the sentencing hearing of Papadopoulos has been put off indefinitely. It will likely never happen. There will never likely be a sentencing hearing for Papadopoulos. In other words, the Papadopoulos bust was a bust. Who's next? Flynn. Michael Flynn. General Flynn. They got him to plead guilty to making false statements as well. But now, Comey has been caught in a lie, as we know from documents recently released, along with things that he has said in recent weeks in his interviews, as well as what's in his book. All three of them come into conflict. It appears that the original notes from the two FBI agents who interviewed Flynn say that they believed he was telling the truth. And that's what the notes appear to say, and that's what appears to have been, that appears to be what Comey told the congressional committee that asked him about that. But then he changes his tune. In his book, he says something different. And publicly, he says, oh, well, you know, I'm not really sure that's the case. I don't know that we made that determination that he wasn't lying. And he tries to flip it again. So clearly, the way things stand now is that the judge in the case that's looking at the sentencing case for Flynn blew the whistle on Uncle Bob and has demanded that they produce the exculpatory evidence, and that judge is reviewing that right now. It's very likely at this point that there will be no sentencing hearing for Michael Flynn. Now, whether or not he tries to get relief from the court and get the charge thrown out or overturned, or whether he reverses his plea, or however that all plays out, I don't know. But we know one thing, it looks very, very likely like there will never be a sentencing hearing for Flynn, just like Papadopoulos. So that is two guys that were charged or pled guilty to crimes by Mueller, who he's never going to get the sentence. They were both turned into busts. Let's go to the next one. Manafort, charged with multiple felonies, including bank fraud, tax issues, money laundering. But now It looks like the first case, there's two cases, one in New York and one in Virginia. It looks like the case in Virginia may likely be thrown out, and even worse, because in this particular case, now this judge, Judge Ellis, has demanded to see that secret document that is a document that Rosenstein originally gave to Mueller to outline what his instructions were and what his mandate was. So the judge wants to see that. Mueller said, "Oh, that's a secret document. We can't show it to you." And the judge said, "I'll be the judge of whether or not that's a secret document and what I get to see. Produce the document or this thing doesn't go any farther." In other words, he's put Uncle Bob into a very difficult situation, as well as the DOJ, the FBI, and the entire cover-up that they're trying to engage in could all be blown up if this document becomes public. Nunes and Grassley are also trying to get this document, and they won't come off of it. What is so damaging in this document that Rosenstein does not want us to see? He doesn't want the judge to see it. He doesn't want Nunes to see it. He doesn't want Grassley to see it. He sure as hell doesn't want you and I to see it. What is so damaging in that document? Well, it appears that this judge, Judge Ellis, is saying either produce that document or this case is going to be thrown out. And that document will reveal some things that will knock Mueller and Rosenstein further back on their heels and may expose an even larger crime on their part. And after all, they're the only ones actually committing crimes around here. So, how is that going? It's likely to be a bust. And the other case that's going to be heard in the Southern District of New York, it appears now that case may go to a Trump-appointed judge. And she may give Manafort a fair shake as well and call the exact same things into question. That could be completely blown up. So that would mean that Papadopoulos, no sentencing. Flynn, likely no sentencing, possibly the case overturned. Manafort, the case likely to be thrown out and may in fact backfire and expose more criminality on the part of Rosenstein and Mueller and the folks than it did on Manafort. Then we have Gates. Well, we don't know what's going on with Gates, Manafort's partner. He decided to cooperate, but that was almost 2 months ago. And since he's chosen to cooperate, apparently he's had no information that's been of any value to Uncle Bob, because Uncle Bob's essentially conceded that he has no Trump-Russia collusion. As far as the case for obstruction, Comey's basically blown that up. You can't possibly bring Comey into court as your chief witness and sit him down there on the witness stand because he has to be cross-examined. Would you want Comey, if he was your client, to be cross-examined? They will destroy him. But without Comey, you have no case. He's your only real witness. In the obstruction case, it's all about him. And what about Rosenstein? He's the guy that referred Comey for firing. What's that all about? Aren't they friends? What's going on here? Raises a lot more questions. But the bottom line is, at this point, we have heard nothing about any sentencing hearing or details of any deals that may have been reached that resulted in anything that was helpful to the Mueller probe. So, it appears that Gates is also going to be a big bust. They were supposed to pressure him into giving information that would get Trump forced out of office or impeached or something like that. But it appears that Gates had nothing. Because there is nothing. It's all a witch hunt. Then, of course, we have the Russian trolls. Now, this is funny because in the Russian trolls case, of course, it was 13 Russian trolls and 3 Russian companies that supposedly may have been involved in hacking the election or messing around in the 2016 election. Well, lots of people were messing around in the 2016 election, Uncle Bob, and including other foreign nationals. Some of them named Christopher Steele. Foreign national. Some of them the government of the UK. The government of the Ukraine. All were meddling in the 2016 election. And we now know that these 13 Russian trolls and these 3 companies were not on the side of Donald Trump at all. They were doing things on both sides. And they're also the ones who put together that little rally in front of Trump Tower, which Michael Moore commandeered. Now, was Michael Moore, has he got a Title I surveillance warrant on him? Have they raided his house at 4 o'clock in the morning and taken the door off the hinges? Have they raided his attorney's offices? No. And so Uncle Bob thought that he was going to drop these charges. And remember, when this happened, there had been a lull period. Mueller hadn't really had much activity going on, and everyone was starting to question, well, we haven't heard much out of Mueller in a while. His investigation must be going south. They must not be finding anything. And there was this big gap in the media, and they needed something to talk about, some reason to keep the Russia thing going. So what did he do? He dropped these charges on 13 Russian trolls and 3 Russian companies, believing that they would never address the issue, that they would, that the Russian government would never show up and even pay any attention to this suit, and that these 13 Russian trolls or these 3 companies would never participate at all. They would just ignore everything, because you can't force them to come over here and appear in court or anything. So Uncle Bob thought he could just throw this up there to get some media attention, to keep the story going, to feed his friends, the trolls in the media, thinking that this would just be something to buy him a little time. But he got a big surprise, didn't he, on Friday? Oh boy, really 2 big surprises. The first one is that one of those 3 Russian companies, they actually had 2 lawyers show up to represent them. Uh-oh, Uncle Bob wasn't expecting that one. That's right, Uncle Bob showed up and they were surprised as hell to see 2 lawyers from that Russian firm. And what did they have with them? A couple documents, a very long list of things that they're requesting, documents that they're requesting, documents that have never been revealed to the public, documents that will be critical in their case to proving their innocence, documents that Uncle Bob, the State Department, the FBI, and all the rest do not want made available to the judge in this case, or to the public, and certainly not to these 13 Russian trolls or the government of Russia. Because as soon as those documents make their way into the hands of these 2 lawyers, they're going to end up right in the hands of Vladimir Putin, disclosing some things that we probably would Putin rather not know. So what Uncle Bob has done is actually put himself and his buddies, the people he represents in the deep state, in a very tough pickle. To make matters even worse, once Mueller's team realized that these 2 lawyers had shown up and they were now in deep kimchi, they did the only thing they could do. They requested an extension or a delay in the case. At which point the judge looked at him and said, "Why?" And they really couldn't give a very good explanation other than saying, "Well, we never got any official thing back from anyone that we filed these charges against, saying that they had received our warrants or anything like that, or our subpoenas, and so we just thought that they weren't going to participate. We really didn't expect that they would show up." Oh, but they did. You know what the judge said? "No, you filed a case. Today's the court date. They're here. You're here. It's all good. Case moves forward. Denied. We're not delaying anything, Uncle Bob. You got some documents to come up with." Bailiff, pass those documents from those attorneys for the Russian trolls over to Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob, you need to go get those documents. We'll see you back here in court in a couple of weeks. So that backfired big time. Not a good week for Uncle Bob, is it? I don't think so. Now keep in mind, these Russian trolls, they have a great defense, as does these 3 companies. What did they do? They bought Facebook ads. Is that illegal? No. They were involved in things to cause disruptions in our political system here. Is that a problem? Oh, yes. It certainly is. But how are you going to prosecute it? How are you going to prove it? You got to connect that they were working for the Russian government. Otherwise, they're just activists. Activists buying ads, activists having protests, activists doing various things that activists do. Unless you can tie them to the Russian government, which you can't, ain't going nowhere. The only thing that's going to happen now in this case is Uncle Bob is going to be made to look like a fool and he's going to have to produce a lot of documents that they do not want the Russian government getting their hands on. They do not want the public seeing. Another fail for Uncle Bob. And how about Trump? Have they gotten anything on Trump? Nope. No Russia collusion. The obstruction case is a massive fail. They can't even proceed with it. Even if Donald Trump walked in and admitted to Bob's face and said, yeah, Uncle Bob, I was engaged in obstruction. Go ahead and charge me. They couldn't pull off the case in court because they can't put Comey on the stand. Because if you put him on the stand, he gets cross-examined by the other side. They would destroy him, shred him, cut him to bits. His credibility would be gone, and so would the case be gone with it. But if you don't put him on the stand, who do you have? There's no one else that can testify to what happened in the private meetings between the two. It's either Comey's your witness or he's not. You can't put Comey on the stand. The obstruction case is gone, baby, gone. And Mueller ain't got nothing but a lot of headaches, a lot of heartaches, and possibly some jail time. Because if this other judge, Ellis, decides that he sees intent or malice, and he decides that this little affair was not your typical run-of-the-mill investigation by a special counsel, but rather it was being used as a frame-up operation, then that itself would be a criminal activity by Uncle Bob and the Hillary donor posse, in which case this judge could have criminal referrals against Mueller and his team. That could backfire very, very badly. So, it looks like, of all those people, the only successful sentencing or the only successful prosecution actually ended up sentencing anybody was this Dutch lawyer who didn't even fight it. He came in, pretty much pled guilty to some minor, I guess making false statements as well. Pled guilty, and I guess he's going to get some kind of a sentence, a year in jail or something, I don't know. Probably a lot less than that. So that's all they really got was the Dutch lawyer. And you know what? He should have pled not guilty and fought it. He might have beat the rap too. All he had to do was his own discovery process and ask Uncle Bob, to produce documents that he won't or can't produce because they incriminate him. So that's the grand total, that's the grand score for Uncle Bob. One Dutch lawyer who got a minor jail sentence. I don't even know if he'll even spend any time in jail. Very little, if any, and probably a minor fine. A Dutch lawyer with a minor jail sentence or a minor fine for misleading statements. Everyone else is either getting completely off the hook, not being sentenced, having their charge reversed, or it's going to lead to possible charges blowing back against Mueller and his team. Maybe go all the way to Rosenstein and Comey and God knows who else. Mr. Ellis could take down the whole swamp with what he's looking into and the things that he is saying. So is it fair to say, my friends, that Uncle Bob, the executioner, had a very, very bad week? And it's going to get worse. He will not recover from that body blow that he suffered last week. It's going to get worse. The Mueller probe is not long for this world. Neither is Uncle Bob or Mr. Rosenstein. Devin Nunes spoke on Fox News this morning and said that they will hold a vote to hold Sessions, Attorney General Sessions, in contempt. This is because they wrote him a letter requesting some documents about FISA abuses. At first, he ignored the letter. When he finally responded to it, he responded by saying, "We ain't giving you that info." So, Nunes has decided that the only thing left for him to do is to hold Sessions in contempt. The vote will be happening this week. We'll see if they follow through with it, if they get the 51% that they need. If they do, they will hold Sessions in contempt. If that sticks and that holds and they feel good about that, they could actually go for impeachment. They could remove Sessions. They would need 2/3 vote in the Senate. I don't think they'll get it. But if you're Jeff Sessions, this is not good. I mean, this is the kind of thing that will have such a negative impact on your position, your credibility in that position, that a lot of times it's something like this that can cause a person to step down. And as I said last week in a video, it's becoming pretty obvious to me that there's a pretty concerted effort, not just by Trump, but by other members of Congress, to force Jeff Sessions and Rodenstein to resign. They want to apply a lot of pressure on them and hammer them day after day after day until they finally just get sick of it and say, you know what, I'm done with this, and they resign. It looks like that's what they're trying to do, is trying to get Sessions and Rodenstein so aggravated, so fed up that and frustrated that they just simply resign. That's what it looks like to me. You're not going to believe this next story, and this next story could have consequences that could blow this thing entire sky high. And this is a new revelation, but I promise you this will be one of the most talked about stories of this upcoming week, and it will probably have to be investigated, and it could lead some places that could be very, very dark. A newly released document shows that the FBI lost the chain of custody of Hillary's server for 5 weeks, from August 2015 to October 2015. So they had to actually create a new chain of custody. In any criminal case or any type of case, when you lose the chain of custody for evidence, that's usually that piece of evidence is thrown out. That piece of evidence is no longer any good when you lose the chain of custody. The fact that that would happen within a minor crime in a small town, you lose the guy's camera or phone or something like that had the evidence on it, that's one thing. This was a major case. This was the Rotten Reverend Clinton server, which likely contained thousands and thousands of classified emails. This was a very special, very, very, very special case. To lose the chain of custody on a piece of evidence like this is absolutely, it can't be incompetence. No way. Can't be incompetence. It's got to be something more sinister going on. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to think exactly that. You cannot convince me ever that this was just another mistake by the FBI. They can't be this effing incompetent, can they? Can they be this incompetent? I'm sorry. I just can't believe it. Let's run through this story just a little bit to clear your mind here and make sure you understand exactly what we are talking about. The FBI confiscated the Rotten Reverend Clinton's email operation, the server for her email operations from Platte River Networks in Denver, Colorado on August the 2nd, 2015. Then they took it to the FBI's Operational Technology Center for storage as item 1B3. Then, an FBI special agent shows up to pick up the server 2 months later. He was told at that time that the chain of custody had gone missing. That means that the server was officially unaccounted for over 2 months. Do you think that maybe this raises questions about whether the FBI doctored that server, added or deleted files, modified the server log, maybe even did a little bleach bidding? This is a problem. This is a big problem because you either have to believe one of two things. Either the FBI is absolutely, completely incompetent, beyond belief, beyond a reasonable doubt. It's beyond a reasonable doubt that the FBI could be this effing stupid, careless, unprofessional, and incompetent. Hard to believe. Which only leaves you one option, that it wasn't incompetence. What this suggests is that literally the FBI, and this would be the small group that we'd be talking about here, probably running this show, They collaborated with the rotten Reverend Clinton to help her by destroying the evidence that could convict her, either by purposely losing the chain of custody or possibly by getting that server, then having someone go get the server, breaking the chain of custody, doing a little work on that server to make sure all the evidence has been erased or extracted from the server to prevent the rotten Reverend from facing justice for her crimes. And that's what this suggests. It can only be either mass, gross incompetence at a level that most reasonable people could not accept, or there was criminal foul play on behalf of the FBI to obstruct this piece of evidence, to damage this piece of evidence, to destroy this piece of evidence, so it could not be used against the rotten Reverend in court in a criminal matter. Unbelievable. This story, believe me, they're going to investigate this, I imagine, and it's going to be hard to explain this one away. My God. How much more evidence do we need? How much more evidence do we need? Haven't we seen enough to know that what the FBI and DOJ did? And this may be what Horowitz, remember we just learned that Horowitz had to push back the date because he found new evidence. And we thought, okay, it's because he's been interviewing people about this Wiener laptop. And that's true, he has been. He's recently been interviewing these cops down in the Southern District of New York, the FBI and the U.S. attorneys, about what happened and how Lynch may have threatened them and all that kind of stuff. That's all being looked into. But maybe the thing that got Horowitz to have to delay was this. Because this is something else right here. This is big time. This is a major piece of evidence, because something like this can be investigated. And it looks really, really bad. It looks like the FBI, which we would be talking about, the group, the small group and the usual characters, the very people the Horowitz is probably investigating, it looks like they participated, collaborated, worked with the rotten Reverend Clinton to help destroy the evidence that would be used against her. They destroyed their own evidence in a criminal case to protect the person they were investigating, allegedly, in a matter. Somebody better come up with some answers for this one. This right here, this is not going away. We'll be hearing a lot more about this story in the days to come, believe me. And there's going to have to be some serious looking at this. I don't know how you twist and spin out of this one. This one's tough. Unbelievable. Is there any doubt in anybody's mind at this point what happened? Man, it just gets worse. We're winning. I'm happy that we're winning. I'm happy to see that the Mueller probe is on its last breath. I'm happy to see all these things are happening, but I'm quite disturbed at what we're learning in the process. This is bad news, man. I mean, you know, yeah, I want the crooked people at the FBI and the DOJ and the State Department and the CIA and all the rest. I want them brought to justice. But Jesus Christ, they're going to destroy the FBI and the DOJ in the process. Reduce this government to nothing more than a freaking banana republic at a time when the president's trying to negotiate a peace deal between North and South Korea. Manage this deal with Iran. Trying to renegotiate trade deals that are better for us. He's trying to do all these things, and it looks like he's president of a fucking banana republic. because of a handful of very corrupt people. And when you look behind each one of them, there's a shadow. And who does that shadow belong to? The rotten Reverend Clinton. Now you know, because I'm sure many of you watch my videos and go, well, he talks about the Reverend Clinton all the time. You know, the election's over. She lost. Why you still talk about the Reverend Clinton? Because she hasn't gone away, my friends. And it appears that an awful lot of people have no choice but to try to keep her ass out of the slam. Because if she goes down, they all go down. Everybody's tied and tethered. Their fate is tied to the fate of the Reverend. If she is held accountable for her crimes, and she should be, all those people who committed crimes of their own to protect her and to embellish her are all going down with her. Very high-level people, including the previous president, Barack Hussein Obama. There's a lot on the line. The stakes are very, very high. This is quite disturbing. It appears now that Senator Magoo wants Barack Hussein Obama to give his eulogy. He's also apparently going to be dissing Sarah Palin in his book that's coming out. Do you think in his book that's coming out, he will reveal his part in the deep state coup? This is his legacy for you people in Arizona. This is what John McCain has rewarded you with. After all those years, year after year after year, you sending him to the Senate, where he could become worth millions and millions and millions of dollars, screwing you all the while. And how is he going to, what's his final ode to you going to be? He's going to completely diss the party. He's going to ask Obama to give his eulogy while saying Trump, he doesn't want Trump there, who's actually doing good for America, unlike Obama and his buddy Magoo, who fucked us every chance they could. This is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Well, let's end on a brighter note, shall we? I know Peter's sitting back going, man, he forgot dumbass of the week again. No, I didn't, Peter. Oh, no, I didn't. I know you're up there in that liberal mecca up near Seattle. And that's why I keep you in my thoughts, my man. I know it's a tough deal up there. It's a beautiful country. I understand why you live there. And the Seahawks are a pretty good team. But you're surrounded by liberal wackos. And so I feel for you, my friend. So, my friend Peter, here we go. Dumbass of the week. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's got to be Uncle Bob. It's got to be Uncle Bob in spades. No one could have been the bigger dumbass of the week than Uncle Bob. And you're right. Uncle Bob deserved it. I'll be the first to say Uncle Bob really deserves the dumbass of the week. But I figure he'll get plenty of other opportunities. And this is a person who I'm naming this week who will obviously not get this opportunity, never had it before, and will likely never have it again. So we didn't want her to go unnamed as the dumbass of the week. And her name is Mandy Manning. She is a social justice warrior teacher. She was named Teacher of the Year. And as a result, she was invited to the White House to receive an award. Trump, being the class guy that he is, complimented her, praised her, presented her with the award. Despite the fact that she would not clap for him, she would not shake hands with him, she would not speak to him, she was wearing social justice warrior pins on her dress. She brought letters from illegals that she teaches to give to Trump. But despite that, Trump did treat her well and thanked her. Now, you can take one look at her and see that she's obviously going through some sort of a transition. I don't know if she was male, now she's becoming female, was female becoming, I don't know. Who knows? But she's clearly one of these typical extreme left-wing, pink pussy hat wearing women's marchers. She's the whole deal. and she made an ass of herself. She was an embarrassment, and she's disgusting. And she's the dumbass of the week.